In the headlines, the outcome of Wednesday's local elections show that the Korean people don't have total confidence in either the ruling or opposition party. But the ruling camp's better-than-expected results will give momentum to President Park's economic and social reform drive. Korea strongly protests. Lawmakers and officials rally in Tokyo, claiming Korea-controlled Dokdo Island is Japanese territory. Seoul adds such denials of Tokyo's imperialistic past will further strain relations between the two sides. The growth of Korea's real output at home and abroad slows down in the first quarter of this year, but analysts say seasonal factors mainly contributed to the slower expansion.
Hello and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Choi Yu-san. Thanks for joining us. The results of Wednesday's local elections are out, and both main political parties in the nation have reason to celebrate.
In some sense, the ruling party is seen as having fared well, as it avoided a huge backlash from the recent ferry disaster, while the main opposition party could find some consolation in winning the nation's most high-profile race, the Seoul city mayor. Our Park Ji-won starts us off with a recap of the results.
The election results for the 17 heads of local governments show the ruling Saenuri Party victorious in 8 regions and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy in 9. Although Seoul was taken by the main opposition camp, the ruling party fared well in the metropolitan area. The party won the hotly contested Incheon mayoral race and Korea's most heavily populated province of Gyeonggi-do. However, the main opposition party claimed victories in the central region in both Chungcheongdo provinces, the new administrative city of Sejong, and Daejeon city. Considering these regions traditionally lean more moderate conservative, the main opposition party will be buoyed by its strong showing there. The nation's southwest and southeast regions didn't veer from their traditional preferences, although rival party or independent candidates had strong showings in the liberals' power base of Gwangju and the southern port city of Busan. As for Seoul, incumbent Mayor Park Won-soon from the main opposition party beat his rival Chung Mong-jun.
This is a victory of all citizens who called for a fundamental change following the Seoul ferry disaster. It's a victory for all citizens who work honestly.
I want to thank the citizens of Seoul. I humbly accept the choice of the people. I hope Mayor Park will lead Seoul by taking on the difficult situations facing the city.
The Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces were the last 2 provinces to confirm winners due to very tight races. In Gyeonggi-do, the ruling party's Nam Kyung-pil edged to victory in the governor's race against his rival by less than 1 percentage point. In Gangwon-do, incumbent Governor Choi Mun-soon also scored a tight win. During the local elections, 17 education chiefs were also elected, 13 of which are considered progressive. Seoul's new education superintendent will be Cho Hee-yeon, a liberal professor, after beating out 2 strong conservative candidates. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
So, with no clear winner between the main rival parties in the June 4th local elections, pundits are interpreting the results in a number of ways.
And our Na Young-kyung reports on what analysts are reading into the results.
The public raised the red flag against the ruling party while keeping the opposition on its toes. Experts say the local election results reflect public anger toward the current administration's handling of April's Seoul ferry disaster that claimed hundreds of lives. But they add, not handing over a landslide victory to the opposition means people are willing to give the Park Geun-hye administration a second chance.
We thank the people who have supported us and given us another chance. We will continue to carry out reforms within our party.
By snatching 9 of the 17 seats up for grabs, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has gained an upper hand for now. But the very narrow win, despite favorable conditions, indicates that the public is still wary of fully trusting the opposition party.
We will do our best to shed light on the truths behind the ferry disaster and focus on establishing fundamental solutions.
The upcoming July by-elections will be another opportunity for the rival parties to gauge public sentiment. Whether the ruling party can strike a chord with the public through President Park's soon-to-be-conducted cabinet reshuffle will be key in regaining support. The NPAD, in the meantime, will have to show and prove that its co-leadership is solid in order to avoid losing momentum. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News.
In politics, it's never too early to look ahead to the next election. The next big one here in Korea comes in 2017, when the nation will choose its next president.
Our Son Jung-in tells us how Wednesday's election results may have some hints about who might appear on the ballot.
Incumbent Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon's landslide victory has set the fates of two political big shots on opposite courses. Although Mayor Park has made it clear he has no intention to run in the next presidential race, some say the main opposition party may not have any better options when 2017 comes around.
The second phase of Park Won-soon's administrative policies will focus on integration. I will move in step with my supporters as well as with my opponents.
Speaking of opponents, Park's competitor and seven-term lawmaker Jung Mong-jun was defeated, a first in his 26-year political career, losing momentum toward becoming the ruling party's next presidential candidate. The beneficiary of his loss just may be Gyeonggi-do Governor-elect Nam Kyung-pil, who now rises near the top of the list of possible ruling party candidates in the 2017 race.
This will be done with President Park Geun-hye and the residents of Gyeonggi-do. I will give my all for renovating this province and Korea.
Another name being tossed around as potential presidential candidate from the ruling party is Jeju Island Governor-elect Won Hee-ryong. Won, along with Nam, are seen as young politicians who will help the ruling party transition from its older generation base. As for the main opposition party, Chungcheongnam-do Governor re-elect An Hee-jung is garnering attention. After serving time in jail for accepting illegal funds in the 2002 presidential race, An, one of late President Roh Moo-hyun's closest confidants, won the Chungcheongnam-do Governor seat in 2010. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Well, with the election results providing some breathing room, President Park Geun-hye has vowed to increase the pace of both Korea's economic recovery and reform drive.
At a luncheon with those of national merit and their families on Thursday, the president said she'll push ahead with her 3-year economic innovation plan and lay the foundation for a peaceful reunification with North Korea. In the aftermath of a deadly ferry accident in April, President Park also pledged to root out ill practices in society to make Korea a safer place to live. Following the ruling party's better-than-expected results in this week's local elections, the presidential office had said the administration would do its best to honor the collective voice of the Korean public and bring about reforms to the nation.
Now, for a deeper analysis on where this week's local elections places the nation's future, we're joined by Professor Kim Eun-mi of Ewha Women's University. Thanks so much for joining us. So, the ruling party took 2 out of 3 key posts in the Seoul metropolitan area, and this despite projections that the ruling party may have faced a big political loss for the government's handling of the ferry accident. What led voters in these particular regions to show confidence in the ruling party, or was the success driven by the personality of the candidates?
I wouldn't think this is giving upper hand to the ruling party. I think the opposition party did not present a real alternative, so I think they gave a second chance to the Park administration. So my interpretation, this is a real check and balance vote and not giving any party a vote of confidence.
Well, Professor, even though both the ruling and the opposition parties fared in their respective traditional strongholds, the gap with the rival party or independents was significantly narrowed in the latest elections. Do you think this is a temporary occurrence in the aftermath of the Seoul ferry disaster, or is this a sign of changing political dynamics here in Korea?
I think this had more to do with the Seoul ferry accident, but as I mentioned earlier, neither party successfully garnered the support of the people. They're still on a holding pattern, waiting to see what both parties are going to do. So the next month or so, until we head into the July election, I think this is a very critical moment where the challenges can turn into opportunity or disaster. If neither party presents a new alternative, this could lead to further problems for both parties.
And what's also worth mentioning from Wednesday's results is that 13 out of 17 elected educational superintendents are considered progressive, and this does seem to reflect the sentiment of parents following the recent ferry accident and the so-called angry parent bloc. What's your take?
First of all, this is a continuation of what we saw in the last presidential election, that women in their 40s were the casting voters. And this time, also, these are the young, the 40-some parents whose children also go to school and are very similar to the young victims in the Seoul ferry. So education is key. The failed education system, the failing of the parents, and the older generation, I think, is what the angry 40 years parents saw in this election.
And what's next for President Park Geun-hye and her handling of state affairs now? Earlier today, she vowed to push forward with her economic and public reforms.
Because she promised to overhaul her cabinet, and she hasn't nominated the prime minister candidate yet, she needs to show that she is going to overhaul her own cabinet and the Blue House. But her mandate that she claimed that she would do is to overhaul the whole national governance. It's not just about safety, but going much further into deep entrenched problems. In order for her to succeed in doing this, she has to do a bipartisan effort, and whether she can reach out to the other party will be a critical task. Finally, she needs to go beyond Seoul ferry and show a new direction for the country as a whole. If she fails to do that, she may become a very early lame duck.
All right, so even with the breather from this election result, she has a lot on her shoulders. Professor, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening.
Although the overall Korean economy continues on the path to recovery, the gross national income is not keeping pace. Last quarter's figure did climb, but at its slowest rate in 2 years. Our Hwang Ji-hye explains why.
It looks like the population's purchasing power in Korea is lagging behind the nation's economic growth. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the nation's gross national income rose a mere 0.5% in the first quarter from the previous one, the slowest pace of expansion in 2 years. But the central bank says that the slower growth is largely coming from seasonal factors.
Above all, smaller dividends earned by Korean companies from their investments overseas compared to the fourth quarter last year resulted in slower G&I growth.
A country's gross national income includes not just the domestic output, but also the income received from abroad. And with companies paying dividends in respect of their financial year that often ends at the year end, the gross national income usually drops in the first quarter compared to a quarter earlier. Overall economic activities remained to be on a track to recovery as the nation's gross domestic product grew 0.9% in the January to March period from the previous 3 months. That matches up with the growth of around 1% that the economy has posted over recent quarters. From a year earlier, Asia's fourth largest economy grew 3.9% in the first quarter this year, accelerating from 3.7% growth in the fourth quarter. The central bank expects the domestic economy to grow 4% for all of this year. 황지혜, Arirang News.
Tokyo has renewed its claims to Korea's Dokdo Island, and Seoul in response has condemned them and called them absurd. Japan's vice cabinet minister, along with Japanese lawmakers and officials, attended a rally in Tokyo on Thursday, calling for a resolution to the Dokdo dispute. But Korea's foreign ministry says there's nothing to dispute, as the rocky islets of Dokdo are and have been always Korean territory. The ministry said in a statement that Tokyo should stop making provocative claims over the island. It also said Japan's relations with Korea, as well as with other countries in the region, would continue to suffer so long as it continues to deny its imperialistic past and atrocities. Joint military drills between South Korean and U.S. forces are a regular occurrence on the South Korean peninsula, but they've never been conducted on American soil before until now. Seoul says 4 weeks of joint drills will run at Fort Irwin in California from Monday to July 1st. 170 Korean members of an infantry and special forces unit will take part. A Korean military official said the goal for the exercise is to enhance joint combat interoperability by carrying out joint war missions and small unit combats.
The Chinese government has lashed out at the United States over comments it made about the recent anniversary of the Tiananmen Square protests.
With more on that story, we now turn to Paul Yi at the News Center. Paul, the anniversary for this historic democratic movement came and went on Wednesday, and it looks like Beijing is still cracking down on any reference to the event, even from Washington.
That's right. China launched a formal complaint to the U.S. after the White House urged its communist leaders to face up to history and admit to the killings of protesters during the Tiananmen Square massacre. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said it was, quote, deeply dissatisfied with the remarks that they say gravely interferes with China's internal affairs. In light of the 25th anniversary of the protests, the White House honored those who lost their lives in the brutal crackdown and said it would always support fundamental human rights. Meanwhile, over 100,000 people took part in a massive candlelight vigil in Hong Kong last night to remember the bloody suppression of pro-democracy activists in Beijing. Leading up to the anniversary, the Chinese government cracked down heavily on any mention of the massacre in 1989, prohibiting public discussion and even censoring online references. And diplomacy is in high gear in Brussels this week as heads of G7 nations have resumed their two-day summit for the first time since expelling Russia from the group. Discussions were dominated by the crisis in Ukraine, including measures to return stability to the eastern part of the country, where fighting between the military and pro-Russian forces continues. The Group of Seven issued a joint statement condemning Russia for its intervention in Ukraine and warned of additional economic sanctions should Moscow fail to do its part to dial back the violence.
The G7 has indicated that dialogue, de-escalation, and the process born from the elections must be encouraged. At the same time, the G7 is ready to intensify and put in place targeted sanctions if necessary.
The world's leading industrialized nations continued their meeting on Thursday, also focusing on economics, trade, climate, and energy policy. More than 100 veterans have been honored at a ceremony in France to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the D-Day landings. The World War II veterans included American, British, Canadian, Norwegian, and French soldiers. They were part of the Allied forces in 1944, which mounted history's largest amphibious assault on the beaches of Normandy that claimed the lives of over 2,500 Allied soldiers.
That after so many people make such a big sacrifice, and young men, they should be remembered what they did. and I feel that a place like Caen here is a good picture of how the French must have suffered when this town got flattened by the RAF. You know.
This ceremony is part of a series of events taking place this week to mark the D-Day anniversary, which lead up to a major commemoration on Friday and the arrival of 17 heads of state. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here next week.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. Now, in the world of sports, results are king. And with that in mind, South Korea's lackluster performances in recent matches have pushed them down to 57th on the FIFA World Rankings. Of the 5 friendlies they played in 2014, they won only 2 and lost 3, scoring 3 goals while conceding 7. But with the World Cup just over a week away, the national team is less concerned about rankings and more about getting into top form after a recent loss to Tunisia.
If we're white at the beginning of training camp and red at the World Cup, then right now we are pink.
Manager Hong also told reporters in Miami, South Korea's goal in Brazil, and that is to first advance from the group stage. Well, his team will look to shore up the loose ends before the World Cup in their final tune-up match against Ghana on June 9th. And heading to the Greens, the 2015 President's Cup captains were named, with Jay Haas leading the Americans and Nick Price heading the international team. And Captain Price chose Chae Kyung-ju, also known as KJ Choi, as vice captain, with the team tournament heading to South Korea's port city of Incheon next year. Chae said that it would be a pleasure to work with Price to help end the world team's losing streak at the biennial event. And finally, to the KBO. The league announced that cheerleaders will be back in action starting next Tuesday. But before that, it's the Nexen Heroes taking on the NC Dinos in Masan. Now we go to the first inning. It's Park Byung-ho who brings home the first run for Nexen. And that's all before a 4-run inning by NC in the second inning, started by Son Ji-hyun's sac fly. It's 4-run NC. Then in the fourth inning, Nexen's An Tae-young, he hits a 2-run home run, and adding a run in the sixth, it's tied 4-4 at the bottom. An error brings Mo Chang-min home to put NC up. It goes back and forth, but in the end, NC goes on to win this one 9-5. And looking at the other games, Lotte beats Hanwha 10-1. Meanwhile, SK takes down Doosan 4-2, and Samsung and Kia are still battling this one. It's 9-7 in the top of the ninth inning. Well, that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
Friday marks the start of a 3-day weekend here in Korea.
And for an update on the extended weather forecast, our Kim Bo-kyung joins us from the Weather Center. Bo-kyung.
Guys, early summer conditions are mostly in store for the rest of this week. Now, June 6th is Memorial Day here in Korea, which is a national holiday. Conditions in general should be good for outdoor activities, with daytime highs forecast to jump to 31 degrees in Seoul on Friday. Taking a look at our current conditions, parts of both Gyeongsang-do provinces are seeing light sporadic drizzles, and up to 5 millimeters of precipitation may fall there through later tonight. Otherwise, there is a slight possibility of rain in the central regions, so grab an umbrella on your ways out just in case. On to Friday's readings. Daegu and Gwangju reach 28 degrees, while Busan hits 24. On to other places. Daejeon tops out at 29 degrees. Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to 18 and 20. Now, holidays are great for spending quality time with family and friends, but let's not forget to commemorate our heroes tomorrow. That's all the updates I have for you at this hour, but I'll be back with more after midnight.
Thank you, Bo-kyung, and that's it for this edition of Primetime News.
Thanks for being with us tonight. We'll see you soon.